TOS fans, Robin here, and I'm back today with another video instalment of our parents' guide to Warhammer 40,000. In many ways, the first video, which was all about the Indomitus box set, was something of a false start, because that wasn't, as it turned out, actually a starter set. It wasn't intended for new players, and so if you were a parent looking at getting that, probably it sold out very quickly, so probably you couldn't, and it probably wasn't really for your children anyway. And I did say in that video that I thought it would be better to wait for the starter sets that Games Workshop were going to bring out, and lo and behold, several weeks later, the starter sets have been announced and will be released forthwith. There's loads of information on the Warhammer community page and the Warhammer 40,000 page, so do check those out because they're a really good resource for new players, and they've got all the lowdown on these sets on there already. But we thought we'd do a quick run through of the new sets because Games Workshop very kindly sent us the 3 sets to have a look at. There are 3 game sets and there are also some paint sets. Now we haven't got the paint sets, but I'll talk a little bit about the painting right at the very end of the video. So I'll start off with the smallest one, which is kind of like probably the place you want to start, and it does say start here on the top, and this one is the Recruit edition, and it starts at £32.50. As I said in the Indomitus video, and it's true of all Games Workshop products, it's not a cheap hobby to get into, but this is a good starting point. I would say this is really good for people who are kind of, they've seen it in the shops. Maybe you've been shopping in town and you've popped into a Warhammer store and the enthusiastic store manager got your son or daughter interested in Warhammer and they want to try it out. This is a really good start off point to see whether it's just a fad or a phase that they're sort of interested, but actually it dies after 6 weeks because you don't want to invest a lot of money into it, and this £32.50 is quite a good way as a taster session. So what do you get in here? Well, let's have a little look. You get a manual to show you how to play. You get 20 miniatures from 2 teams. So the game it's a war game normally between 2 sides over a battlefield terrain, which you can normally play on a table, but you can play on the floor as well. All of the new sets have 2 armies. The Space Marines, who are, I suppose, nominally the good guys, they are part of humanity, and they're the Imperium, which is kind of trying to bring order to the universe. Although it is, should say, this is a dystopian universe, and even that there are no real good guys, and there are definitely things wrong with the Imperium. And that kind of exploring that universe is part of what the game is about, and there is some information about that in the box. You get 2 teams, the Space Marines, there's 6 of those in the box, it's only a little army, and 14 of the other guys, the Necrons, and they are, I always think of them as Arnold Schwarzenegger at the end of Terminator, implacable robots who just keep coming at you, and they're like an ancient civilization of kind of skeletal robots, and they're trying to kill the Space Marines, and the Space Marines don't like that, so they're trying to stop them. And that's kind of the first battle. So what do you get in the box? Well, let's have a look. You get these and these. Now, try not to rattle them too much because they make horrible noise on the camera. There's some bases and some dice. The dice, everything in the game is run by little 6-sided dice, so they're really important. But you can use any dice. You don't have to just stick to these ones. Any dice will do. The more you've got, the better, to be honest. You also get a couple of range rulers because everything in the game is done via measurement, and things move in inches, and these are all measured in inches. Again, you can use any ruler, any ruling device, as long as it's measured in inches. And then probably the thing that your children are most interested in is probably these, which are the miniature sprues, and you will need to cut them out and assemble them. They don't need any glue, which is absolutely brilliant. They're push fit and they don't need any glue, but you will almost certainly need to invest in some sprue clippers. The recommended age for the game is 12 plus. I found it engages children who are younger than that, but obviously they're going to need a degree of support. I think 12-year-olds probably could assemble these, but they're going to need some support anyway. It really depends on your child, and you know your child, how arty they are, how creative they are. Younger children can definitely do it with no glue. It makes it much easier. Even if you were to use glue to put them together, because you can stick them together, it's polystyrene cement, not super glue, which is a really key thing, because although polystyrene cement doesn't smell that nice, you won't come back and find they've stuck their eyelids together or anything like that. You don't need any glue, that's the first thing, but I would recommend getting some sprue clippers, and they basically look like a bit like pliers. I haven't got any to hand. Games Workshop sell them, or you can get them in pretty much any model shop. We'll put a link in the description below. I actually think they're probably the most important thing you can buy. I'm a bit like a reformed smoker on this. I never used to think they were all that good. I just use a scalpel, but I've realised they're so much better. They just give you much more control over it, and of course when you're with children they're much less likely to slip and cut their fingers. So that's kind of, that's the first thing. There are a few extra add-on purchases, and you probably will need to buy some sprue clippers to make this nice and easy, but the miniatures do all go together, and there are instructions in the book on how to put them together, and there's help on, I think, on the community pages, as I talked about. They will show you how to assemble them. So in the bottom of the box is also a little transfer sheet, which when you painted them you can you put water on them and they soak off, and you can stick them to the miniatures, but that's really right at the very end. What else is in here? Well, there's also this fold out sheet, which is basically going to turn into your battlefield, so you can put this on any table space or floor space. A little press before it lays completely flat, but it's basically a photorealistic battlefield in which you can play your games. And you can see on this side it's actually got some letters, and that will help you with the rules. Will explain how to play the game in the booklet, which I'll show you in a minute. What's really neat about this, and Games Workshop have been doing this for a few years, but I still think it's really neat, and one of the best things they've done for starters, is that this box that it all came in actually flips upside down, and you've got terrain on that side and some nice kind of terrainy bits, and that forms the battlefield. Because one of the hardest things when you're starting out is having stuff to play around, and you can use anything when you first start, but having that box which is all sort of detailed up is really nice. You get a couple of small sheets with the statistics of the models in the game, so you're fighting between these two armies, and each model is represented by a data sheet. And I'm not going to go into the depth of that for this, because this is not a how to play game, but basically the more power points something is, so these are 5 and 4, these Space Marines, the more powerful something is, and that's reflected in how, so in the dice numbers here. So this is, they have a weapon skill and it's 3+, that means they roll these 6-sided dice, they get a 3+, then they've hit. And that's why there are a lot less Space Marines, because there were 5 and 4 power compared with the Necrons here, and they're worth 2, some of them, although there are some that are worth 4 or 5 as well. But that's all you need, all the information for all the miniatures in the box for this game, and they're on separate pages, so when you're playing they're nice and easy and accessible. And then you get this little recruit manual. So this is the recruit set, and it comes with a recruit manual, and this has everything you need to play to start learning the game. From the very beginning, it talks about the hobby, and it talks about the world in which you play. So that's the Imperium and the Warhammer 40,000 universe, which is massive and has loads of add-on stuff. But this is the very basics of it. This is the first steps into the world of the Space Marines and the Necrons, if you like. And then it goes into start playing, and it explains through a set of well, first of all, it tells you how to build your miniatures, which is handy. Normally they come on a separate sheet, but it's very well detailed, and it's much clearer than I've ever seen any Games Workshop assembly instructions. So that's really good. It's a really positive thing. It really goes into great detail on how to assemble them. And then you have these first contact missions, and it explains the rules of the game. So basically it's all split down, but you learn how to move your men, you learn how to shoot with their weapons, and you learn how they would fight if they finish shooting and then are actually trying to sort of use their fists or claws or swords or whatever it is they're wielding, and then what to do, how to resolve that conflict, and what happens when that conflict has been resolved. And it goes through that in a number of short battles, and it recommends, I think, on the back of this, that games will take between around 60 minutes, and for a small model count game that's about right. It takes longer when you first start because you're learning and there's lots of things to look up, but this should take you all through it, and it's a really, really handy introduction to Warhammer. And as I said at the top of the video, if your child is just expressing their interest and you're kind of not quite sure whether they're fully up for it, then I would go with this one, because the outlay isn't too bad, and they'll have some nice miniatures to play with. You do need to paint them, and as I said, there are some paint sets available. which you may or may not want to get. I think we'll probably do a separate video on the different approaches you might want to take to painting your miniatures, because it's quite an in-depth field. I mean, for many people, the hobby is painting it. They don't really play very much, they just spend their time painting it. And there's a wealth of material out there. Some of it will be overwhelming, but there's some really great videos for beginners. Again, Games Workshop do some really great videos for beginners, but I have noticed that you'll let you to forget that. So we'll cover how to best paint your miniatures as a beginner in a separate video, hopefully. Next up is the Elite Edition, which is essentially the same as the previous edition. Obviously it's bigger, it's a bigger box. This one is priced at £65, so it's a little bit more of an investment. I'm not going to unpack this one because it's essentially the same. It has more miniatures in it. So it has 6 Marines models, including a Captain Marine, is very impressive, and it has 3 bikes. Now that could actually be a selling point for your child. My son absolutely loves anything with motorbikes and the Marines with motorbikes, so he would definitely prefer this set. It's got more Necrons as well, so there's got 18 of those, which I think includes 3 big destroyer models. So you've kind of got 3 motorbikes, 3 destroyers to give you an extra dimension, and that's reflected in the rule book as well. This rule book, I think the Recruit Edition has 4 little missions to teach you how to play. This one has 6 because it tells you how to do the more speedy combat and moving the bikes and things. So it adds an extra dimension. It's got the same inlay box which you can put down on the terrain mat. It's got a paper terrain mat again, but again you can flip it over. It's got the dice, it's got the rulers, it's got a bigger sheet of transfer because you've got more more models in here. It's got the data cards, and again it takes you through step by step how to play. So it's essentially the same, but it's £65. So you're starting to look at a more significant investment for this one, and you're definitely going to want to think about whether you skip this one, I think, because I think the third set, which we'll look at in a second, represents if not a better value for money, then if you're not going small, you might as well go big. That's what I think, because this one is good and it will supplement what you've bought, but I think the next set, which we'll have a look at in a second, I think is probably the best value altogether. So the final edition is the Command Edition, and this is seriously heavy. You can't see that, but it's a seriously heavyweight box. This is packed full, as we'll see in a minute, of amazing stuff. The Elite Edition, I just have the Elite Edition. The Elite Edition, you can see, is quite a lot smaller than the Command Edition, and that's reflected by the contents, funnily enough. So let's have a little look. The base content, the base miniatures, are exactly the same. So it's got the same Marines and bikes, Necrons and Destroyers, the bigger ones, as the Elite Edition. So they're the same. So not the small edition, but the middle-sized edition. But what this one has is extra terrain. It does come with an extra price. It's £40 more than the Elite Edition. So this one is £105. The Elite Edition is £65. But I think that £40 is thoroughly worth it, I have to say. So you get the same Marine miniatures, but you get amazing scenery. So this kind of brings me on to the second thing I think you need in addition to these boxes, and that is a can of spray primer paint, which Games Workshop do, but you can use other model varieties. It's basically an undercoat for your miniatures. You definitely want to undercoat your miniatures. If you're going to paint terrain, you don't want to be painting an undercoat on with a brush. You have to put undercoat on because otherwise the paint comes off really easily when you handle them. But if you're using terrain, you can just about get away with it on the model, especially if you've only got the Recruit Edition, which has only got sort of half a dozen models. You could get away with painting it on. It can get a bit boring. You might want to do that for your child because they get bored after doing that for 10 minutes. But if you can afford a spray, or you want to get a spray, you've got somewhere to spray, you kind of need to spray outside, then I would thoroughly recommend getting a spray can for this terrain. This terrain, however, is amazing. I've been in this hobby for nearly 40 years, which just shows how old I am. But the terrain, the plastics have enabled the hobby to really explode on the terrain front, and the terrain that the Games Workshop do now is just so good and evocative, and just frankly it's just amazing. And you're essentially getting that for 40 quid on top of the other set, which makes it just completely and utterly worth it. Here's some of the bikes for those of you who might like bikes. and they just immediately brings your tabletop to life. I will say you don't get a little cardboard house, if I want a better word, as you get with the other one. So you're missing out on that, but that's only cardboard, and it isn't going to cover many games. You do get this lovely, amazing plastic terrain. You get a little separator to protect your models inside the box, but you actually get more rules-wise as well. You get the command manual, which is essentially the same as the other book I showed, and the Elite Edition has it in as well. They just have a slightly expanded version because they have more models in them, but it's basically the same book. It has as I said, it has the lore and the welcome to the hobby stuff at the beginning, and then it has all the rules of how to get into the game. But this set has this little rule book in it, which is probably going to be worth its weight in gold. There is an official big hardback tome full of stories and lore and amazing pictures of miniatures, which is really, really nice, but A, really heavy, B, far more than you need, and C, I'm not sure how much the individual price of that is, but it's quite expensive. This comes with all the essential stuff, so basically it tells you the full rules of the game. This command manual and the other manuals, they have the how to play, learning the basics. This has the far more in-depth different ways to play, all the advanced rules and everything in there. It has everything in there, and it has what I think is probably the best thing for young players. It has the rules of the Crusade rules in there. Now the Crusade rules, what are they? It must mean nothing to you if you're a parent. It's essentially turning the game into a story. So it's basically you've got your little army and it goes out on a mission, and it might be successful or it might fail, but then things happen to the members of that army. They get more skillful, they get scars, and it kind of turns what is a one-off game of chess, if you like, into a story where the queen can remember that last time she fought, the knight took her down or whatever, and suddenly your children are hopefully building stories about their miniatures, and when they're painting them or whatever, they're characters that come to life in their imaginations. That at least is the hope, and that is covered in here. The Crusade rules, I think it's the best innovation for 40k that they've done in a long time. It's always had a really strong competitive scene where people take it very seriously and meet in big halls full of miniatures and dice, and they fight over to see the best. But actually, what 40k is really good for as well is telling stories, and that is all included in here. So that's a really nice little book, and it's nice and succinct. You can slip that in a school bag really easily. It's not going to break their back. I think that's a really great little addition. I think that's probably, of all the things, it's probably the best thing in all of these boxes, with the possible exception of the terrain. A couple of more exactly the same, I think, cards with the stats on. Having said that this little rule book was the absolute best thing in the box, it might actually be this, which is a cardboard version of the paper sheets that we had. Like, it's even got the same letters on it, and it's just such good quality. It's huge, and you can play your games on that, and it's really solid. Much more, I don't know, there's something much more pleasing about it than playing on a shiny table mat that the other ones had. This is really good. Really nice way to start playing the game. Much more robust, and I think much more evocative. It already makes you feel like you're playing a serious game, whereas I think the smaller sets with the paper ones, it feels a bit like you're not playing properly. This immediately makes you feel like you're playing, and it has applications potentially for other games. They do other games where you use this sort of tile and mat. They're bringing out a whole separate box which have more terrain in it, and another one of these, so you can put those two together to make even bigger board. I think this is a brilliant addition, because I found when growing up, the hardest thing was finding a tabletop to play it on, and even if I found a table to play it on, I still didn't have any area to play it on. What I used to play it on wasn't very good. These are basically photorealistic boards, and they're just fab. I just think they're such a good thing. I would like to see Games Workshop make more of these, because I think there's definitely a market for them, and it's brilliant for parents. It makes it nicely. They fold away nice and easily, so I think they're really, really good. At the bottom of the box, I haven't got much left. I've got more bases to put your models on when you've made them. There's a big sheet of transfers, and there's dice, and a couple more rulers. So each one's got rulers and the dice to play in. So every set in here has what you need to play with what's in the set. You will need some clippers, and you'll probably need some paint to get the best out of it. And so we'll do a separate paint video. But I think this is what I was looking for in the Indomitus set, which was the big kind of flagship set. This is how to get new players into Warhammer. If your child has come and said, I want to play this game, one of these will be what you want to buy. I would say if they just showed a passing interest, like just off a Saturday afternoon in the shop, then go for the small one. You probably know this anyway because you're not going to shell out £105 on a whim. The small one is £32.50. The big one is £105. If they want it, if they're expressing an interest now and they badger you now until Christmas, then that's the one to go for, because it is, I think, excellent value. The terrain is great, the board is great, the little rule book is great. There's everything they need to play and more. It will start them on their journey for the hobby, I think. And hopefully Age of Sigmar will be there with you for that. We will hope, as Games Workshop make new products, we will hopefully be able to review them and talk about them. We love a lot of Games Workshop games. We both play Warhammer 40,000. There's a new app coming out which will help particularly youngsters get into the game too. So it's a really exciting time. This is the 9th edition of the game. It's been going for over 30 years. It's a really exciting time to be in it, but it is a bit bewildering if you're a new parent and your child is going on and on about it. I have exactly the same experience with Pokemon and Minecraft. You've probably experienced it already. But it's a really great hobby, and this is a really great way into it. So there you go. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, do stick them in the comments below, and we'll do our best to answer them. But hopefully you've got all the information you need here to start your child out in their hobby of Warhammer 40,000. If not, like I say, do ask questions below. Do check out the Warhammer community page which we'll put a link in the description, because it's a really great place to go. Games Workshop are very supportive of new people into the hobby. There you go. Until next time, take care, and we'll see you soon on the Age of Sigmar. If you did enjoy this video, do like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff, because it's nice to be loved. See you soon. Bye.